next question or two is probably a little bit more specifically political than this pastor's conference tends to be, but I think it's justified given the current cultural situation. And this thought experiment might pressure test your naive optimism, Joe. But if in a few months Donald Trump is the Republican nominee and Bernie Sanders, a socialist, or Hillary Clinton is the Democratic nominee, should Christians feel the liberty to vote in accordance with their conscience and say, I'm going to choose the lesser, whom I regard as the lesser of two evils? Or does there come a point where voting for a particular candidate becomes sin? And then distinct from that, but related, how should pastors counsel their people to vote? Or is that something a pastor has no business telling his congregation?
Boy, I can hardly wait to hear what you're going to say.
Yeah. If you got to choose between a communist and a fascist, both draped in the American flag, what do you do? It is possible to sin while voting in a whole host of ways. And it is possible to sin against God because you vote for a candidate whose policies are so evil that to cast your vote for them would be to support a grievous evil, right? We all know this. We all, I think, especially if to vote for Hitler in the 40s, were he up for election? He wasn't at the time. But had he run for re-election and you knew about Auschwitz and you voted for him, that would be evil. That would be really evil. And it's those kind of, and we tend to be very good at picking out the evils of a previous generation. So we'll lament German Lutherans for going along to get along, or we'll lament, rightly, Southerners who were complicit in the evil of racism, slavery, Jim Crow, and the like. But we have a harder time seeing clearly our own shortcomings. So I think, I would say this. It would be a sin to vote for, I think it would be a sin to vote for a pro-choice politician. Someone who's adamantly committed to abortion rights. It's a gross evil. And so to say, I support them, I think is sinful. Now, I know what that means because I have friends who voted for pro-choice politicians of both parties. But the fact that that's what so I'd say yes. And so I think whether that would apply in the case of Trump or something like that, given what he's saying, you have to make your own judgment about how serious he is.
Does that rise to the level of church discipline?
No, I wouldn't put it at the level of church discipline. I wouldn't discipline over that sort of thing. But I would try to preach clearly that there are certain evils which are so abortion and issues like that are of a different order of magnitude than tax policy or even a lot of the other stuff. If Bernie Sanders was pro-life, I think there's all sorts of foolishness that he believes, but I don't think it would rise to the same level in relation to abortion is the big E on the eye chart. And if you're going to get that wrong, why do we trust you about anything else? And that doesn't mean because one candidate might be pro-choice, you're obligated to vote for the other guy, right? It's a principled act to not vote, right? If God, so sometimes, and this may be the case this election, if God intends us to vote, He'd give us candidates.
Unless what God intends us to do is to exercise our judgment in face of the ones that have come along in His providence to not vote. I agree with what has just been said in very large part. I think there are a couple of extra factors that go in. I mean, what has really been said is that everyone is called to make a judgment about the hierarchy of evils. But there's also a hierarchy of goods too. And moreover, the realities of our voting system may mean that if you don't vote, and a whole lot of people like you don't vote for this particular candidate because of this particular issue, therefore the other candidate gets in, which may not be something that you want to put up with. In other words, you may decide on a principled basis not to vote because both sides are just so evil on these gross categories. I mean, think of all the times the Bible denounces in the strongest possible terms arrogance. Just in the most fundamental terms. I say the word arrogance, and does any candidate come to mind?
A lot of them.
Yeah. Oh, it's true. It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, does that become something that you don't vote for? I mean, and it may. But if you decide then you're not going to vote for this party and you're not going to vote for that party, does it mean therefore overwhelmingly likelihood that a certain person will get in who may not have got in if you and a lot of your friends had voted the other way? And so the decisions that you make are not easy ones. They're complex ones in the complexity of a representative democracy.